Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. We're going to be going over the top 10 best decks as we approach this weekend's Melbourne and Santiago regionals. Whether you're attending those events or you're attending locals, these decks should be quite good for this weekend. I'm going to be going over the top 10 best decks based off of recent results and my own ideas as a professional Pokemon TCG player. All the lists are going to be available in the pinned comment that you can copy and paste right into live. And if you need any of these cards for your decks, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, PTCGL Store, and if you need any sleeves or accessories, check out Ultimate Guard. Give this video a like, share, subscribe, and let's jump into our top 10 decks. Jumping into our number 10 deck, that is... At number 10, we have Roaring Moon with the Dunsparce. Now, we saw Aiden Koos make 17th place at Milwaukee Regionals with this deck. I won a League Cup over the weekend with this deck, and we actually just recently featured this on the channel, taught a class on it. It's a really cool deck. Probably one of the best single prize card decks that we have in the format, just attacking with Roaring Moon, really two-shotting a lot of your opponent's Pokemon until you can eventually scale, but you also can get a knockout with Unrelenting Onslaught with Koraidon, or with any of Roaring Moon EX's attacks. I think that we're going to see a little bit more of this deck, but it's still going to necessarily, it's not going to necessarily see a lot of play, but it does seem quite effective into our current metagame. So if you're looking for a strong pick for Melbourne, Santiago, Portland, locals, this deck was fantastic. Neutralization Zone just shuts off Joltic Box completely. And matchup spread is great against Raging Bull, Gardevoir, tough against Dragapult, but pretty much great against everything else. So I think with this deck kind of kicking into the list, we might see it stay on the list again next week. But of course, we'll have to find out. If you have anybody put your best guesses for the top 10 decks, or just left the comments in the comment section, be sure to do that. It does help boost the YouTube algorithm of this video. Let's move back cooking at number 9. At number 9 this week, we have Tera Box. Now, Tera Box has kind of had a rocky road of success, but I think it did pretty well at Milwaukee across the board with players like Alex Szymanski, Rahul Reddy, Josh Frink playing it. And we saw some players include Volcanion EX, a card that I've talked about way back when I first taught my Tera Box class, but you can still check out on my Metafy page. I think a deck like this has answers to a lot of things, and the Volcanion gives you answers to Pikachu EX, which we're seeing a little bit more prevalent when it comes to Joltic Box, and we can also just use it to scale our damage by a little bit more because sometimes we don't do enough. Wellspring Ogerpon EX is still going to carry pretty heavily against Pokemon like Dreepy, the Enzurua, and Routes, but otherwise we have the normal cast of Tera Box cards. There's a Jamming Tower in the deck, which I think is becoming a little bit more common. And it's just to really bump your own stadium, your opponent's stadium, and shut off tool cards. Obviously, that's what the card does, but that could be a Bravery Charm in a Gardevoir deck if they're attacking with a Drifloon or something like that. Overall, Tera Box seems like a pretty cool play for any upcoming events, as long as you know what you're doing with it. It's still a really hard deck to play, but a lot of it's going to be Pokemon into specific matchups and really trying to match those outs. Will it be higher next week or the following week? Maybe. Really depends on how the metagame shifts up. But let's see what we got going on at number 8. Number 8 this week has Gholdengo EX with Dragapult. Now, this deck seems to be sliding down a little bit, and it probably has something to do with Joltic Box really entering into the format. Pikachu EX being able to knock out the Dango, and not really being able to get knocked out in return. Sure, they have the Monkey Dory, but if they don't have damage counters on their side of the board, there's not really too much that they can do there. So without them playing a Vengeful Punch or a Rocky Helmets, they really can't score that OHKO. So Iron Hands early, knocking out those Dreepies, Gimme Ghouls, or just going Pikachu throughout the entire game with Power Hourglass. Now, I think that Gholdengo still has a strong matchup spread. I think our top 10 is growing stronger every single week. And this is probably the best way to be playing Dango right now, ripping all those energies with Make It Rain and really seeing how it goes. I think that this is Caleb Rogerson's list, if I'm not mistaken, from making top 16 at Milwaukee. Incredibly strong player, having an amazing season. And I don't really see too many other changes that we kind of go with going forward. At number 7 this week, we have N's Zoroark. Now, Lucas Zing played this deck to a top 8 finish at Milwaukee. Maybe they did better than top 8. I don't entirely remember. But the cool thing here is that they included Bombardier EX as a way to get out multiple basic Pokemon and just using that as a consistency card. So I think I need to pull that card out of my non-playables back into my playables. And Zoroark seeing success for similar reasons as Tera Box, being able to knock out multiple Pokemon with that Flame Body Cannon on N's Darmanitan. Having access to being Dark type against Gardevoir really helps. And I think overall, this deck just kind of had an improper look at it the first time. I know that I was one of those players that was like, yeah, Zoroark probably not that great. Now it's seeing success. So sometimes original takes on a deck or the metagame can shift in its favor. I think Zoroark is poised well for future tournaments as long as you know what you're doing with this deck. But at the same time, it's another one of those decks that probably struggles a little bit once Shaman comes out in Destined Rivals. So if you are thinking about playing it, make sure that you get it out before Shaman starts blocking that bench damage. As always, we're going to include the updated lists for all of our decks. So if we update anything for Zoroark, next week we'll include it in our top 10 best decks video. We're almost the halfway point of the list, so let's see what we got cooking at number 6. At number 6, we see Eevee Box, a deck that's starting to get a little bit more respect, and we saw that Ian Robb had a fantastic run by making top cut with it at Milwaukee. Not too much has changed when it comes down to this deck. I think a lot of it's still like Flareon's still incredibly powerful against things like Gholdengo. We have Sylveon, which is great against these stage 2 Pokemon decks. And of course, you have a favorable matchup against Raging Bull, which makes it a pretty strong choice across the board. I think that Joltic Box might be a little bit of a tough matchup, but if someone's able to crack the code on that matchup, I think that this Evolution deck could be quite strong. Now, the biggest thing that we've seen for changes is like people might cut Glass Trumpet out of the deck and just really try to adjust things here or there. I think that's completely fine. I personally like it right now, but I have been experimenting with cutting it out because I know it was from some of the earlier lists, and maybe I just need to get with the times, y'all. So even though I made day 2 in Monterey with this deck and made top 64 at that event, losing my tie-in in for top 16, it's one of those things where Eevee Box seems like it's continuously strong there, and I think we're going to see some more of it being played this upcoming weekend and at Portland Regionals. At our halfway point of this list, we have Raging Bolt at number 5. Now, Raging Bolt here, I think, might be a little bit low, but there's a lot of great decks in the current top 4 that are kind of pushing this one back. So we'll have to see exactly which decks are kind of keeping this one out. Christian Labella won Milwaukee Regionals with this list. Having access to the baby Raging Bolt gives you a lot of opportunities to knock out those Dreepies, knock out those routes. So you can see a lot of single prize cards or Pokemon that can take multiple prize cards or snipe prize cards are all going to be the current theme of decks seeing success. Having Jamming Tower to shut off Pokemon tool cards at the right time. I think that this is a pretty solid build of Raging Bolt. Not really too much is changing. We're still ripping energies through Bellowing Thunder, but it is a little bit slowed down from its aggressive roots. You have a lot of options here, and it's playing out kind of like a Tera Box deck where you have all those different techs that you might want to be attacking with. I think we're going to see Raging Bolt see a little bit more success going forward, and if you haven't played against it, it did just win that regionals, so I think people are going to want to bring it. We're about to enter into the top 4 decks. These decks are all absolutely amazing. I mean, most decks on this list are amazing, let's be real, but we're getting closer to the top. Let's see what we have coming up next. Coming in at number 4 is Joltic Box. You've heard me talk about it a bunch, but it's really one of the new coming decks that we have for this format. After Tyler Matthews made top 8 with it in Monterey, the deck kind of exploded in popularity because of its ease of play, using Joltic Charge to power up your Pokemon, powering up an Iron Hand, powering up a Pikachu, and otherwise it's pretty easy to go from there, where you're like, do we go against the little Pokemon with Iron Hands, or do we go against the big Pokemon with Pikachu and try to like kind of stomach a hit with that ability? That's really where the deck's at, and that kind of gameplay is allowing players to get their first day 2s, their first League Cup wins, and it's allowing strong players to play this deck absolutely perfectly. believe the list that we have here is Gabriel Smarts from day 2 at Milwaukee. It was a list that I enjoyed looking at the most, and I think playing the most. And we recently just covered a video on this, I believe yesterday, so be sure to check out Joltic Box there. I have an upcoming class on the deck coming up on Monday, so if you want to learn a little bit more about the deck, be sure to check that out. Let's see what we got cooking at number 3. At number 3, we have Dragapult with Dusknoir. So this deck's becoming a little bit less popular than other Dragapult builds right now, and that's probably because other Dragapult builds typically beat these. So the Munkidori version typically does well against the Dusknoir version, but I feel like the Dusknoir version does well pretty much against the rest of the metagame a little bit more. Having access to use Curse Blast to knock out other Pokemon really can allow you to board wipe. I think we'll have to see how this one goes, because I could see this deck, maybe if the Dragapult Munkidori does not see as much success, this one's going to see as much success. But I think that Dragapult in general is just a fantastic choice in our Journey Together format, especially if you're able to kind of hold your opponent back with Itchy Pollen, using gust cards like Boss's Orders and Counter Catchers to make the best decisions possible, and really see how far it takes you. I think that most of these builds look very similar, and a lot of times we're seeing these new techs like Bravery Charm to increase the HP of Badoo, so that you're able to have these longer Badoo wars to really get set up in the backgrounds. Wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the most played decks in Melbourne and Santiago, so we'll have to see. But let's see what's going on next at number 2. Our runner-up of the week is going to be Gardevoir EX. Now, Gardevoir EX has had an incredible run in the Journey Together format, winning the most majors it's had, but it didn't really see as much success as we wanted to in Milwaukee, probably due to players countering it with cards such as Zoroark, playing cards like Wellspring Ogerpon. We're seeing the Raging Bolt, the Baby Raging Bolts. So I think Gardevoir is kind of a little bit targeted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to see success. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Brent Tonneson going back to Australia and playing Gardevoir again, maybe claiming another Top Cut title to his otherwise amazing season. We have some fantastic players who play this deck all over the world, so I think Gardevoir is still going to continue to use Psychic Embrace, accelerating energies to your Pokemon, moving damage counters around with Munkidori, and using Iono for disruption. This is just one of those decks that is default one of the top 5 decks, no matter which kind of point in the format it is, and it always ends up towards the top. So if you are a Gardevoir player, it would be an absolutely amazing pick for this weekend. Now, it's not our number 1 deck of the week. It was incredibly close, but our number 1 deck of the week is straight up Dragapult is our number 1 deck of the week. Now, we've seen a lot of players play it to a lot of success. It's often the highest finishing Dragapult deck in any top 8 at regionals, and there's usually multiple there. Being able to use Munkidori to fling back damage that your opponent's putting on your Pokemon, and then just focus on manually attaching, manually building up Dragapults, and playing disruption cards to really hit your opponent where it hurts. This type of gameplay is absolutely amazing, and it just rewards well-timed use of simple actions to really make the most of it by placing damage counters correctly, moving damage counters off your Pokemon, stopping your opponent with Genesect. So it's like the Dragapult Dusknoir deck, except it's tastefully teched for our current metagame. I could see us cutting a Jacques and adding in a Brock, or cutting a Brock and adding a Jacques, but that's typically what we see when it comes to these decks right now, is just which one's better, which of the Ox, right? And I think whether you want to be searching for basic Pokemon or 1 evolution or just 2 evolutions is going to be a battle that goes against everyone else through the test of time. We'll see if this deck continues to see success through this weekend. Maybe it's going to be on top again, maybe it's not, but that's why we always cover the top 10 decks every single Friday. Let me close things out. And there we have it, another week of great decks. The metagame's always changing, and I hope that you stay tuned for these every single week as we get ready for our next events and whatever's going on. The metagame's always changing, whether it's by a couple cards, a couple decks. There could be large shifts, no shifts at all. So tune in every single week. I'm Zach Lesage, and you can always hit me up for some coaching at metafy.gg/@ZachLesage, or check out one of my group classes that fall into a little bit more of an affordable $10 per like a 1 to 2 hour class. All that directly supports me as a creator, so if you want to help support the channel a little bit more, that'd be absolutely fantastic. I usually post these in the comment section or the post section of YouTube or on my various social medias, which you can get in the description. Desert Rivals coming up soon, so we're probably going to be switching up our content between Journey Together and Desert Rivals, as we've been doing so right now. But I hope that you've been enjoying the content either way, and we'll catch up with all y'all soon. Much love and have a great one. Peace out. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes.
Tabi no hajimari wa tsune ni michi e no ippo de aru. Sore wa yami e to tsuzuku. 初めの一歩を踏み出すには勇気がいる。そして旅の終わりには旅を始めた時の自分とは別人になっているかもしれない。旅に出よう。物語の次の章がお主を待っている。将軍の道を歩め。侍の箱とともに。アルティメットガードが送る冒険の第一章。刀将軍の道近日発売。
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content that we have today, and maybe you'll click on one of these other videos, enjoy those videos too. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what video you want to watch next. Until next time, we'll catch up with all y'all later. Have yourself a great day.